The great library of Station 12 floated in the darkness between stars. It was old, older than most species could remember. Inside its walls, millions of data files held the secrets of the galaxy. Most of these secrets were boring: trade agreements, dead languages, maps of planets that no longer existed. But some secrets were different. Ambassador walked through the floating shelves with slow steps. She was tall and thin, with silver skin that changed color when she felt strong emotions. Right now, her skin was pale blue. She was confused. For 300 cycles, had studied dead civilizations. She knew everything about species that had risen and fallen long before her people reached the stars. But she had never seen files like these. The files spoke of a species called humans. According to the old records, humans came from a small blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. A planet so dangerous that the ancient scholars had marked it with a red warning symbol. The records called it a death world. Read the details and felt her skin turn darker blue. The human planet had extreme temperatures. Some parts were so cold that water became solid. Other parts were so hot that the ground itself could burn flesh. The planet shook with earthquakes. Mountains exploded with fire. Massive storms tore across the surface, destroying everything in their path. And yet somehow, these humans had survived. Not just survived, they had become the dominant species on their world. The old files said humans were persistent predators. They could not run fast like other hunters. They were not strong. They had no claws or sharp teeth. But they could keep moving when other creatures stopped. They would chase their prey for hours, for days, until the prey simply collapsed from exhaustion. Found this disturbing. She found the next part even more disturbing. The files said humans formed bonds with other predators. They took wolves, dangerous pack hunters with sharp teeth, and somehow made them into companions. They called these wolves dogs. They called them good boys. They let these predators sleep in their homes near their children. Senior archivist found sitting alone in the reading chamber, surrounded by floating screens of data. Was old even by standards. His silver skin had faded to gray, and he moved with careful, slow movements. He looked at the screens around and made a sound of amusement. "The human files," he said. "I wondered when you would find those." "Are they real?" asked. Lowered himself into a floating chair. "They are very old. Some scholars believe they are corrupted data. Others think they are stories, invented by the founders to frighten young species." "Frighten them. Behave or the humans will come," smiled, showing his small teeth. "It is an effective warning for children." Looked back at the screens. But the details are so specific. Their biology, their behavior, their world. Why would anyone invent something so strange? "Because strangeness is frightening," said. "A species that consumes poison for pleasure, that decorates their bodies by pushing metal through their skin, that continues to function while injured, driven by something they call spite." He shook his head. "These are nightmare creatures. They exist to remind us that the universe is dangerous." Was quiet for a long moment, then she asked, "What happened to them?" "The files do not say. The last entry is over 10,000 cycles old. After that, nothing. The Galactic Council marked their region of space as restricted. No one has traveled there since." "Why restricted?" Skin flickered with an emotion could not read. "Some things are best left alone." But could not leave it alone. In the following days, she read every file she could find. She learned that humans had a concept called love that was considered a form of madness by other species. They formed attachments so strong that they would die to protect strangers. They held grudges for generations. They created art and music and poetry, expressing emotions that had no logical purpose. They also waged war with a fury that the old scholars could not explain. One file described something called the World Wars, conflicts so massive that millions of humans died, and yet after each war they rebuilt. They grew stronger. They reached for the stars. The last file contained a set of coordinates, a location in the restricted zone labeled with a single word, Sol. Saved those coordinates. She did not know why. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was something else. But she felt deep in her silver bones that those coordinates were important. 2 cycles later, the swarm began their expansion. They were not like other species. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They consumed. World after world fell to their endless hunger. Their ships darkened the skies of peaceful planets, and when they left, nothing remained but ash and silence. The Galactic Council sent their fleets. The fleets did not return. Watched the reports come in, each one worse than the last. 40 worlds consumed, then 50, then 60. The Council spoke of retreat, of sacrifice, of acceptable losses. But there were no acceptable losses, not against an enemy that could not be stopped. On the night they reached the outer colonies, looked at the coordinates she had saved. Sol, a small yellow star at the edge of nothing. A death world, a nightmare species, a legend. She thought about its words. Some things are best left alone. But some things, she realized, were worth the risk. Made her decision. She would find the humans. If they existed, if even a fragment of the legend was true, they might be the only hope the galaxy had left. And if they were just a myth, well, at least she would know. She began to plan her journey to the restricted zone. Captain had commanded the research vessel Wandering Star for 15 cycles. She had seen many strange things in her time among the stars. She had watched binary suns set over crystal oceans. She had listened to the singing nebulae of the outer reach. She had discovered life forms made entirely of light. But she had never broken a council law. Until now. The Wandering Star was a small ship, built for exploration rather than combat. Its crew numbered only 12, all scientists and researchers who had chosen the quiet life of discovery over the chaos of the core worlds. They were not soldiers. They were not heroes. They were simply curious. And curiosity was learning, could be a dangerous thing. Ambassador stood on the bridge, her silver skin flickering with nervous energy. She had arrived 3 days ago with a proposal that should have refused immediately. A journey to restricted space. A search for a species that probably did not exist. A mission that could end with all of them executed for treason. Had agreed anyway. She was not sure why. Perhaps it was the look in his eyes when she spoke of the humans. Perhaps it was the reports of the advance, growing closer every day. Perhaps it was simply that had spent her whole life looking for wonders, and this was the greatest wonder of all. Navigator checked his instruments for the 10th time. His scales rippled with anxiety, shifting from green to yellow and back again. "We are approaching the coordinates," he said. "But Captain, I must say again that this is a very bad idea." Noted replied. "The restricted zone has been closed for 10,000 cycles. No ship has entered and returned. We do not know what is out there." "That is rather the point." Chief Science Officer stood at his station, arms crossed, his expression sour. He was the oldest member of the crew and also the most skeptical. He had made his opinion of this mission very clear. "We are wasting fuel and risking our lives for a fairy tale," he said. "Humans do not exist. They never existed. When we find nothing at these coordinates, I want everyone to remember that I said this." Did not respond. She simply watched waiting. The Wandering Star dropped out of hyperspace. For a long moment, no one spoke. A yellow star burned against the darkness. Around it, planets moved in their ancient orbits, but it was the third planet that held everyone's attention. It was blue, blue and green and white, wrapped in clouds that swirled across its surface. It was beautiful in a way that had rarely seen. And around it, filling the space between the planet and its single gray moon, were thousands of objects. Ships, stations, satellites, more technology than had ever seen in one place. Impossible, whispered. Scales had frozen in place. I am detecting active power signatures, weapons systems, communication arrays. This is not a dead world, Captain. This is a living civilization. Skin had turned bright gold. They are real, she said. The humans are real. Before anyone could respond, the communication array activated. A signal cut through the silence of space, broadcast on every frequency. The message was simple, transmitted in mathematical patterns that translated easily into galactic standard. This is Earth. State your intentions. Felt her heart beating faster. Earth, the human name for their world, the death world at the edge of the galaxy. What do we say? Asked. His voice was shaking. Opened a channel. This is captain of the research vessel Wandering Star. We come in peace. We are seeking contact with the species known as humans. Silence. Then a new voice. Female, calm, with an accent that the translator struggled to process. Well, you found us. Hold your position. We are coming to say hello. Within minutes, ships appeared around the Wandering Star. They moved with incredible speed, surrounding the small research vessel in a perfect formation. The ships were unlike anything in the Council database, sleek and angular, built for both beauty and violence. One ship moved closer than the others. Through could see figures moving inside. Bipedal creatures, soft-skinned, watching the Wandering Star with curious eyes. A face appeared on the communication screen. A human face. Female, with dark hair and dark eyes, wearing a uniform marked with symbols that the translator identified as military rank. The human smiled. Her teeth were visible, white and straight. According to the old files, this expression could mean many things: happiness, amusement, threat. I am Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet, the human said. We have been waiting a very long time for someone to find us. Did not know what to say. 15 cycles of exploration, and she had never felt so completely unprepared. Why were you waiting? Asked. The Council closed this region of space. They said you were dangerous. Admiral laughed. The sound was strange, sharp, almost musical. Dangerous? Yes, I suppose we are, but we did not close that border, Ambassador. The Council did. They looked at our world, at our history, at what we are, and they decided we were too frightening to exist. But you did not try to contact us. We tried. For thousands of years we tried. Eventually we stopped. The Admiral's smile faded slightly. We learned to be patient. We knew that someday someone would need us badly enough to come looking. Stepped closer to the screen. The swarm, they are consuming the galaxy. The Council cannot stop them. We know. You know. We have been watching, listening. We may be isolated, but we are not blind. Admiral leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to glow with something that could not name. Tell me, Ambassador, did you come here hoping that the legends were true? Hoping that the nightmare species from the death world would save you from the monsters? Hesitated, then she nodded. Admiral's smile returned, wider than before. Good. Then you came to the right place. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador. We have a lot to discuss. The Wandering Star was escorted toward the blue planet, toward the world that should not exist, inhabited by a species that should have been impossible. The galaxy was about to learn that some legends were true. And some legends were even more dangerous than the stories suggested. The orbital station above Earth was enormous. It stretched across the darkness like a city made of metal and light, home to thousands of humans who lived and worked in the space between their world and the stars. The crew of the Wandering Star walked through its corridors in complete silence. Everything they saw confirmed the old legends, and everything they saw terrified them. Lieutenant was their guide. She was young by human standards, with short black hair and a quick smile that showed her teeth. She walked with easy confidence, pointing out features of the station as if she were showing guests around a garden. This section is residential, she said. Families live here, children go to school, normal stuff. Stared at a group of young humans running past, chasing each other and laughing. "Those are your young?" he asked. "They seem very energetic." "Kids are always energetic, they will sleep eventually," shrugged. "Probably." Was studying his scanner and his scales had turned a pale, sickly color. "Lieutenant, I am reading your environmental data. Your planet has earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, hurricanes, and extreme temperature variations. Your oceans contain predators with hundreds of teeth. Your land contains predators that can run faster than your species. How did you survive long enough to build all of this?" Considered the question. "We got angry about dying." Angry. "We decided that if the universe wanted to kill us, we would make it work for it. So we learned. We adapted. We built tools and weapons and shelters. When something tried to eat us, we ate it back." She smiled again. "Now we keep some of those predators as pets." Captain remembered the files about dogs, wolves that humans had somehow turned into companions. She shuddered. They passed a large window that looked down at Earth. The planet turned slowly below them, blue and green and impossibly alive. Stopped to stare at it. "It really is a death world," she whispered. "We prefer to call it home," said. "But yes, it has tried to kill us many times. We are still here." The council chamber was at the center of the station. It was a large circular room filled with humans from all over Earth. Noticed that they came in many different colors and sizes. Some had pale skin. Some had dark skin. Some had eyes that were round. Others had eyes that were narrow. But they all shared the same strange calmness. Admiral stood at the center of the room, surrounded by holographic displays showing the advance. Next to her stood a large human male with gray hair and a face marked by old scars. He was introduced as General. 47 worlds, said, gesturing at the display. They have consumed 47 worlds in the past 3 cycles. Your fleets have retreated. Your defenses have failed. At current speed, they will reach your core systems in approximately 6 standard cycles. Nodded, the numbers were even worse than she had feared. The council sent me to find you, she said. They did not believe you existed, but they were desperate. We are all desperate. General made a low sound in his throat. The council erased us from history. They called us monsters. They left us alone at the edge of the galaxy for 10,000 years. Why should we help you now? The question hung in the air, felt the weight of it pressing down on her. Because, she said slowly, we are asking. We were wrong about you. We were afraid of what you might be. But now we are more afraid of what will happen without you. Silence filled the chamber. Then Admiral began to laugh. It was the same sharp sound from before, but this time it carried something else. Something almost warm. Spite, she said. That is a very human reason. Did not understand, spite. Doing something specifically because someone said you should not, or would not. They think they cannot be stopped. The council thought we were too dangerous to exist. Both of them were wrong. Looked around the chamber at the humans who had gathered from every corner of Earth. What do you say? Should we show the galaxy what humans can do? The response was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was simply a wave of nods, a murmur of agreement that passed through the room like wind through grass, as if the decision had already been made long ago. General stepped forward. We will need time to mobilize our forces. Our fleet has been waiting for this moment, but we have never fought a war on this scale. How much time? Asked. 30 standard days. That will consume 3 more worlds in 30 days. His expression did not change. Then tell those worlds to hold on, help is coming. Had been quiet throughout the meeting. Now he spoke up, his voice thin with disbelief. I do not understand. Your species was abandoned, forgotten, treated as a nightmare to frighten children, and you are willing to die for the same people who did this to you. Admiral looked at him. Her eyes were dark and deep, filled with something that could not read. We spent 10,000 years looking at the stars, she said. wondering if we were alone, wondering if anyone else was out there. You answered that question. You proved that the universe is full of life." She paused. "We are not doing this for the council. We are doing this because those 47 worlds had people on them, families, children, lives that mattered, and that took them. But they were not your people." "No, but they were people." Turned back to the holographic display, studying the positions. "That is enough." Lieutenant led the delegation back toward their ship. As they walked, found herself next to the young human officer. "Your admiral said, she speaks of caring for strangers, but the old files say your species also waged terrible wars against each other. How can both things be true?" Was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We contain many things, love and hate, kindness and cruelty. We can hold a grudge for 1,000 years or forgive someone in a single moment. We are not simple, ambassador. We never have been." "Is that not confusing?" "Constantly," smiled, "but we manage." The wandering star departed Earth carrying a message for the Galactic Council. The humans were real. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. Behind them, the blue planet continued to turn, and the humans began to prepare for war. The planet IV was dying. From the observation deck of station, Ambassador watched the swarm descend from the sky. There were billions of them, dark shapes that blocked out the sun and turned day into night. Below, the planet's surface burned as the swarm consumed everything in its path. The Council's defense fleet had fallen in less than an hour. Evacuation transports burned in the atmosphere. The screams of the dying filled every communication channel. Had seen reports of attacks before, but seeing it with her own eyes was different. This was not a battle, it was an ending. "How long until they reach the station?" she asked. The station commander, a trembling creature named, checked his instruments. 2 hours, perhaps less. We have no weapons capable of stopping them." "Then we evacuate." "There are no ships left, they destroyed them all." Closed her eyes. So this was how it ended. After everything, after finding the humans, after carrying hope back to the Council, she would die here, watching another world fall. Then the sensors screamed. "New contacts," shouted. "Hyperspace signatures, hundreds of them." The flickered and changed. Where there had been only darkness and death, new lights appeared. Ships dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Human ships. 300 of them against 10,000. Felt her heart stop. The communication array crackled. A familiar voice filled the station. "This is Admiral Park of the United Earth Fleet. Sorry we are late, traffic was terrible." A pause. "All human forces, weapons free, show them what we can do." The Battle of IV began. From the station, watched the impossible happen. The human ships moved with speed and precision that logic. They twisted through the swarm, avoiding attacks that should have been unavoidable, striking back with weapons that cut through vessels like light through shadow. "Their pilots," whispered. "They are performing maneuvers that would kill any other species. The acceleration forces alone should be crushing them." Remembered the files. Humans could survive extreme physical stress. Their bodies had evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. What was lethal to other species was merely uncomfortable to them. But the ships were only part of the battle. On the planet below, human soldiers dropped from orbit. They came in individual pods, falling through the atmosphere at incredible speeds. When they hit the ground, they hit hard, creating craters in the earth. And then they rose. Private was 19 years old. She had joined the military because she wanted to see the stars. She had not expected her first combat mission to be on a dying world, surrounded by billions of alien monsters. But here she was. Her pod had landed in the middle of a swarm. The creatures surrounded her, all teeth and claws and hunger. Her rifle felt light in her hands. "Contact," she said into her helmet radio. "Engaging." She fired. The next 6 hours were a blur of violence. Did not count how many she killed. She did not count how many times she was injured. At some point, a piece of chitin had embedded itself in her shoulder. At some point, her leg had shattered from a fall. She did not stop. She could not stop. The creatures kept coming, and she kept fighting, because stopping meant dying, and dying meant failing, and failure was not an option. When reinforcements finally reached her position, they found her sitting on a pile of bodies, her rifle empty, her armor covered in blood that was not entirely her own. "Private," the medic said, scanning her injuries. "You have lost 40% of your blood volume. Your leg is broken in 3 places. You should be dead." Looked up at him. Her eyes were tired but clear. "I was angry," she said. "Different thing." Across the battlefield, Sergeant led his squad into the heart of a hive ship. The creatures had captured an evacuation transport before it could escape. 70 civilians were inside, awaiting consumption. They did not expect a rescue attempt. They did not understand that humans would risk death for strangers. They did not understand spite. Squad cut through the hive ship like a blade through flesh. They found the civilians huddled in a cargo hold, surrounded by guards. The battle was brief and brutal. When emerged from the hive ship, he was carrying a child in his arms. Behind him, his squad escorted the survivors toward waiting human transports. "Who are you?" one of the civilians asked, staring at the strange soldiers who had appeared from nowhere. Smiled behind his helmet. "We are humans, we came to help." The battle lasted 12 hours. When it was over, they were retreating. For the first time in their long expansion across the galaxy, they were running. On station, Ambassador stood in stunned silence. Around her, the station crew wept with relief. They had been certain of death. Now they were alive, saved by creatures from legend. Admiral's face appeared on the communication screen. She looked tired, but her eyes still held that strange fire. "Ambassador," she said, "are you safe?" "Yes, thanks to you." Paused. "I watched your soldiers fight. They took injuries that would kill any other species. They kept fighting anyway. That is what we do. The old files called you persistence predators. They said you would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Is that what you did today?" Considered the question. They think they are unstoppable. They think they can consume everything in their path without consequence. They were wrong. She smiled, showing her teeth. "We are the consequence." Thought about the battle she had witnessed. The human pilots laughing over the radio as they performed impossible maneuvers. The soldiers dropping from the sky like falling stars. The sergeant carrying a child through a hive ship filled with monsters. "You did not have to come," she said. "IV was not your world. These were not your people." "No," agreed, "but they were people, and they were hurting them." She shrugged, a simple human gesture that carried the weight of 10,000 years of evolution on a death world. That was enough. The Battle of IV would be remembered for 10,000 cycles. It was the day the galaxy learned that the legends were real. And it was the day they learned to be afraid. The war lasted 3 standard years. It was not a gentle war. They did not surrender easily. They fought with the desperation of a species that had never known defeat, throwing everything they had at the human forces that pushed deeper and deeper into their territory. But the humans had learned something long ago, on their small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. They had learned that survival was not enough. They had learned to win. Admiral called it total war, the complete focus of an entire civilization on a single goal. Every factory, every ship, every person working together toward victory. It was terrifying to watch. It was even more terrifying to fight against. The galaxy learned many new human words during those 3 years. Words like artillery and combined arms and shock and awe. They learned about human music, strange rhythmic sounds that soldiers played during battle to keep their spirits high. They learned about human literature, stories and poems that commanders quoted before charging into enemy lines. But more than the weapons, more than the tactics, the galaxy remembered the humans themselves. Lieutenant had changed since the first day on Earth Station. She was older now, marked by scars that she wore with strange pride. When a soldier fell wounded during the Battle of the Outer Ring, carried him 3 kilometers through hostile territory. She took 2 plasma burns in the process. She did not stop. "Why?" the soldier asked later in the medical bay. "I am not human, you do not know me. Why would you risk your life for mine?" Thought about the question. "Because you were hurt," she said finally, "and I could help, that is all that matters." Captain of the Wandering Star had long since stopped being surprised by humans. Her research vessel had been assigned to the human fleet as a support ship, and she had spent 3 years watching the impossible become normal. She watched humans laugh in the face of death. She watched them cry over fallen comrades, then rise to fight again with tears still wet on their faces. She watched them adopt alien crew members as family, forming bonds of loyalty that crossed every boundary of species and culture. One evening she asked Admiral about it. "Your species forms attachments very quickly," said. "My crew, you call them friends now. You defend them as fiercely as you defend your own people." The old files said this was a form of madness. Smiled. It was a tired smile, worn by years of war, but it was still warm. "Maybe it is madness, but it works." "How?" "When you care about someone, you fight harder for them. When you know that your friends are depending on you, you push past limits you did not know you had." Looked out at the stars. "Humans are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the most intelligent, but we have each other. And that has always been enough." The final battle came at the edge of space. General led the assault on the home system. 10,000 human ships against the last defense of a dying swarm. The Queen herself commanded the defense, throwing every remaining warrior at the human lines. It was not enough. When the battle was over, and the Queen's flagship drifted broken in the void, General did something that shocked the galaxy. He offered terms of surrender. "You could destroy them," Ambassador said, standing beside him on the bridge of his command ship. "After everything they did, all the worlds they consumed, you could end their species completely." Nodded slowly. "We could." "Then why offer mercy?" The old general was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. "Because destruction is easy," he said. "We have destroyed many things. Our own people, our own world, sometimes ourselves. We are very good at it." He paused. "But building is harder. Forgiveness is harder. We have spent 10,000 years learning that revenge does not heal wounds. It only creates new ones." "But they were hungry. They consumed because that was all they knew, but hunger can be satisfied. Fear can be calmed. Even monsters can change if given the chance." Turned to face her. "We do not destroy because we can. We destroy because we must. Today, we do not have to." They accepted the terms. Their expansion ended. Their species survived. And the galaxy remembered. 1 year after the war, a new council chamber was built. It was larger than the old one, with space for many new species. Human flags flew alongside the others, no longer hidden, no longer forgotten. Ambassador sat in the chamber watching the proceedings. Beside her, Admiral observed the debate with tired eyes. The war had aged her, adding lines to her face and gray to her hair. But she was still smiling. "Why did you help us?" asked finally. The question had haunted her for years. "After everything, the quarantine, the erasure, we treated you like monsters." Was quiet for a long time. When she answered, her voice was soft. "Because you asked," she said simply. "You were afraid and you came looking for help, and that was all it ever took." "But we abandoned you." "Yes." "We called you nightmares." "Also yes." "We tried to pretend you did not exist." Laughed, that same sharp sound that had first heard years ago on the bridge of the wandering star. Ambassador, we spent 10,000 years alone, wondering if anyone else was out there. When you finally came, when you proved that the universe was full of life, we were not going to waste that gift by holding grudges. Even after how we treated you. Even then, looked at the chamber, at the dozens of species working together to build something new. The old files called us many things: persistence, predators, death, monsters. And yes, we are all of those things, but we are also dreamers, artists, lovers. We create music and poetry for no logical reason. We form bonds with strangers and call them family. We look at the stars and wonder what is out there. She turned too, and her eyes held something vast and ancient and impossibly gentle. We are not simple, Ambassador. We never have been. But if there is one thing that defines us, it is this: we do not give up. Not on ourselves, not on each other, and not on the galaxy that tried to forget us. Thought about the journey that had brought her here. The old files in the floating library. The blue planet at the edge of the galaxy. The soldiers who fell from the sky like stars. The old records called you impossible, she said. They were not wrong. They said you were terrifying. Also accurate. They said you held grudges for generations and forgave in an instant. That you loved so fiercely it was madness. That you threw yourselves on grenades to save strangers. Nodded, all true. How do you contain all of that? Admiral Park, hero of IV, survivor of the final battle, smiled one last time. Her answer was soft, honest, and perfectly human. Badly, she admitted, but we keep trying. Outside the chamber, the galaxy continued to turn. New worlds grew, old wounds healed, and the legends walked among the stars, no longer myths, no longer forgotten. Just human. That was enough.